gonna be a different year. This is not the place for fear. I've got a job to do.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you guys did have a very good long weekend. Today's October 13th, and we're going to pick up right where we left off last week. If you look at the board, over here on the left-hand side, I moved the agenda, which was on the back board up here. It's a little bit smaller, but you can very easily, everyone can see, you're facing front, what we're going to do this week. Our goal is to do Chapter 11 today. We're going to tackle Chapter 12 and 13 on Thursday, and then on Friday, 14 and 15. You can see we're doubling up on some of these chapters now. Now that we have the patterns, now that we have the routines down, we can read a little bit more. We all know these chapters are short. They're 4 and 5 pages long, so there's no reason why we can't do 2 chapters together, all right? You guys can definitely read 10 pages worth, especially since we've been reading a lot of it in school. All right, so our goal by the end of the week is to get through Chapter 15. Okay, by now you guys all should have read the message. You should have logged into your Chromebooks and pulled up your kid blog questions, so those are ready to go when we start talking about Chapter 10. All right, today, what is the homework going to be? Ruth, what are we going to do for homework today? What, can you read it really loud?
Chapter 11, the reading guide.
Yep.
Chapter 11 quiz.
And last, we're going to blog a question. Again, it sounds like it could be a lot, but we will have read most of the chapter here in class, if not all of it. And that way you guys will just have to take the short quiz, post up your question, and then answer some of your friends' questions. Before we begin, I want to do, so the first thing that I want to address, and I put a short message right here in the Google Classroom, is what I was just talking to you guys about. And you guys are going to get this message today. When you guys are at home learning on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, specifically Thursday and Friday, we need to make sure that we're being appropriate on the live stream. If you guys are, can someone turn your volumes off on there? I think it's you, Noah. Can you just can you mute yourself, Noah? Or Parker? Thanks, guys. And then if you want to raise your hand or answer a question or have a question you want to ask, just unmute yourselves then. Okay, so if we can't be appropriate with the comments or on Google Classroom, then that's a privilege that we might lose. There's not a lot of other teachers that are always doing live streams. I'm trying it out, so we're seeing what works and what doesn't work. And, unfortunately, a couple people are not being appropriate, and we need you guys to always be appropriate on there. So right now, the comment section, I turned off the comments. So if you guys try to leave a comment, you can't leave a comment. If you want to say something, you're going to have to raise your hand. Okay, so for you guys, when you're at home Thursday and Friday, you'll see that those comments are turned off. I do want to get to a point where I'll turn them back on because that's important. The other thing that I want to talk about, guys, is writing. Every one of our quizzes, Piper, we have a written response. You guys are doing really good on the multiple choice. But what's happening on the written response is people are simply either not answering it. That's one thing. People will literally skip the question. Or they will read the question and it says answer in a full paragraph, and I might get one sentence. And even the sentence that they write often doesn't have a capital or period. So what I've done is right on today's post and also underneath the classwork tab is I've made another material for you. Okay, last week I made that material for you guys with questioning. I made another material here, and it's right underneath today's post in the Google Classroom. You guys, if you guys can go split screen, you guys can see it too. I want everyone to go to the Google Classroom and open up this material, how to answer short written response questions. I want to spend about 5 minutes talking about this. Because if you guys become stronger writers, you're going to become much better scorers on your quizzes. But more importantly, you're going to be able to articulate yourself better on paper. All right. So I just got done covering this. So the question I'm going to use as an example is from Chapter 7. All right, Chapter 7. And John, you're right here by the camera. Okay, I put the question up here. So this was a question that you guys answered on your Chapter 7 quiz. John, would you read the question?
Max and Kevin face one of the first conflicts together on the 4th of July. What do you think of the way Max and Kevin handled Tony D and his gang? How would you deal with Tony D if you were in Max's shoes?
Very good. And in this one was one of those where I said answer, in a short paragraph. So, here is an example. You guys can look at it on the board, or you can look at it on your own computer screens. If you're looking at your computer screen, I will assume you're looking at this short document. And again, you don't need to do anything. This is an example, IDER, okay? Where the I stands for this, Frank, stands for? Intro. And this is simply where you turn the question into a statement using proper nouns. A lot of you guys like to start your written questions with pronouns. They, he, them. We shouldn't use pronouns before we use proper nouns. So I'm going to show you how I do that. But your intro, this is where you take your question, you turn it around, and you turn it into a statement, an introductory statement. Then we have the D. Piper. What does the D stand for? The D stands for? Details. This is where you guys answer the question. The question here, there were two of them. What do you think of the way Max and Kevin handled his gang? And how would you deal with him? So the D, this is where I answer the question using specific details. And you might need more than one sentence. You'll see this question has two questions in it. So you need to have, most of the time, more than just one D.
5.
Okay? Justina, what's the E stand for in IDER? Evidence. This is where you support your answer. Okay, you just answered it. This is where you support your answer with specific evidence from the text. And again, you'll usually need multiple sentences. And the last one is R. Jane, what's R stand for? Reflect. Reflect, like when you look in a mirror, you see yourself looking back at you. Reflect is the same thing. You look back on what you've written. You look back on the question, and this is where you get to share your own thoughts about the question or the topic that was discussed. Now, I'm going to show you my written response. And you'll see I put the letters right in there. You guys would not do that. All right, so here's my intro. On the 4th of July, Max and Kevin have a conflict with Tony D and his gang. Have I answered the question at all yet? No. All I've done is taken the question and I turned it into a statement, a topic sentence, Piper. All right. My question is all about how Max and Kevin handled this conflict with Tony D. So I come out, Frank, and I just state it. And I use specific. I don't say they. I say Max and Kevin. I don't say them when I'm talking about Tony D. I use the proper noun. I use their names, okay? So on the 4th of July, Max and Kevin have a conflict with Tony D and his gang. I've now introduced you to my topic, my answer. So now the next thing I need, Ruth, is I need to answer the question. And you'll see in my answer, how many D's do I have, Ruth? Ruth, look right here. I'm right here. How many D's do I have in my answer? I have 2. I have 2 details. There were 2 questions. I have 2 D's. I have 2 details. So, John, this is where I answer the question. So, Justina, this is what I would write. I think that Max and Kevin handled it as well as they could. Notice, it's capital, it's a period. This is what I think. I think that they handled it as well as they could. Because the first question was, how do you think they handled it? The second part was, what would you do? I probably would have done the same thing they did, except for calling Tony names. I'm truly thinking about it and answering the question. I'm not just saying I do the same thing. All right? I probably would have done the same thing, except for calling Tony D names. Now I've got to support my answer with evidence, Justina. So I have 2 E's. And this is what I say. This is pulling stuff straight out of the book, all right, to help me support what I think what my answer is. So I say this: even though Max is bigger than Tony, he knew that if he got into a fight with him, that he would have to fight his entire gang. So he tried to avoid getting into a fight. I pulled that information from where? Right out of the book. Right out of the book. All right? My second E. Kevin, who doesn't know Tony D like Max does, stood up for them by calling Tony a cretin, which I always encourage people to do. However, it could have turned out very bad for him if the cops hadn't driven by. Think about how bad things could have gone if the cops didn't go by. All right? That might have been the end of both Max and Kevin. So now, I've introed it, I have my details, so I've answered the question, Piper, and I've supported my answer with evidence. The last thing is to reflect. Think about my answer, think about the situation, and put my own ideas and my own thoughts on it. And this is what I said, John. I am not sure that calling Tony a name was a good idea, and I think they were very lucky that the cops made Tony and his gang run off. Those are my own thoughts, my reflection. So, guys, when I'm asking you to write a short paragraph, this is what I'm asking of. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's only 6 sentences. This is not long. You're 6th graders. It's 6 sentences. So when you guys answer a question like this, and you answer it in 1 sentence, or something that's not even a sentence, okay? Most people had said something like, run away. That's how they answered it. So they would read this question, how would you deal with Tony if you were in Max's shoes? They wrote the words, run away. It's not even a sentence. So when the questions are asking you guys to write, you need to write in complete sentences. Use this document. This is just a sample. This is an example for you to follow when you guys are trying to write your own written responses. Okay? And I know right now, Justina, I'm just introducing it to you. So I don't expect you to have perfect writing tomorrow. But this is your goal. Okay? I want this to be your goal. So each day, you're trying to strengthen your writing a little bit. And I'm not asking you guys to do a ton of writing. I'm usually only asking you to write for 1 question. All right? Maybe 2. Here are some things to avoid. And this is some things that I noticed that you guys like to do. We like to do this thing where we say, and I used my writing as an example, I think Max and Kevin handled it well. I think Max and Kevin handled it well because. You do this thing where you make a statement, and then you state the same exact thing, but now you've added the word because and you give some reason. You don't need to say, I think Max and Kevin handled it well twice. You don't have to say it twice. This becomes redundant and repetitive. Just tell me once, I think Max and Kevin handled it well because. All right, and then you can do that. You don't need to say, I think Max and Kevin handled it well twice. Do you see how that's happening in this answer, John?
Yeah.
This is something that a lot of students come to 6th grade and they're doing. This is what they do. Also, avoid this. When you guys use evidence, I know a lot of kids using evidence is new. Try to avoid these things. Do not use these phrases. These are the don't do's. Don't say, I know this because. Don't say, I know this because. Don't say, my evidence is. And don't say, I found this on page blank. Instead of doing that, I'm going to show you guys. I'm going to add something to this document. Instead, notice in mine, I never use any of that language. I specifically am describing what happens in the book. Okay? So that's one of the things that you can do.
We can see you typing this right now.
I know you can. Instead, use something like according to the text. Or instead, say something like Max says. If you're asking about something, put us right in there. What does Max say? Pull a direct quote out of the book. All right? Or you could do the same thing. You could say, according to Kevin, again, you're putting us right in the book. These are just some ways that you can do it. Now, again, as I just said to Justina, I don't expect you guys to be perfect yet. But I want you guys to start to strengthen your writing. And I want you to know that that's probably one of your biggest hurdles right now. A lot of you are getting 7 out of 8 on the multiple choice. But then you're not getting any credit. And this last quiz, chapter 10 quiz, it said answer in a short paragraph. If you wrote 1 sentence, it could have been a great sentence. You got 0 points. Because you didn't answer in a paragraph. So my standards, they're going up. When I'm asking you guys to write a paragraph, if it's not a paragraph, I'm not giving you guys the points. Because I'm not helping you become better writers if I allow you guys to do that. So right here, this is the document, guys, again, that you guys can use to help you in writing strong paragraphs. Are there any questions right now about the sample I just showed you? Okay. So now, guys, let's turn our attention back to the blog. Let's turn our attention back to our reading. Today we're going to be reading chapter 11, but before we can, we got to talk about chapter 10. We have to talk about chapter 10. I have my book out. Piper, you should have your book out. We're also going to look at your questions that you guys wrote on Kid Blog. Chapter 10. Where does Kevin take Max in chapter 10? Piper. The sewer at 3 in the morning. Why? Why, Piper?
Because Max, Kevin said there was a treasure.
Good. What is the treasure?
An old purse.
An old purse. And who does the purse belong to? All level 1 questions. All right. So now I'm going to start us off with my first level 2 question, and then you guys are going to take over with your own level 2s. My level 2 question is this. If you were Max, would you have gone on this quest with Kevin? Explain. Okay? If you were Max, would you have gone on the quest for treasure at 3 a.m. with Kevin? And explain.
That's what my sister said.
Frank, you want to start us off? Answer my question.
I probably wouldn't because it was at 3 a.m. and I probably have trouble staying up that late unless like I was watching TV or something, and I'd still be like way too tired to get there, and I wouldn't know what time it is. And
Okay.
Stuff.
All right. How about you, Ruth? And if you want to answer the question, raise your hand. All right, and I'll look to see if you guys want to jump in. Ruth?
I think that I would go at 3 in the morning because curiosity would get the better of me.
Ooh, good. She said curiosity would get the better of her, so she would go. Justina?
I think I would because I'm basically up at that time and I would be able to stay up and help him with it.
Okay. Jane?
I probably would because sometimes I stay up that late when I'm with my what's his name? Friend. And also I would want to know like what was in there and
Okay. One of the things that I want to see you guys try to do now is when you're explaining your answer, remember, I'm putting you in the book. So you guys are responding, well, I have a hard time staying awake that late. But an answer where you're really in the book is putting you in Max's shoes. And so this is how I would answer that question. Yeah, I would go on the quest for treasure with Kevin because so far he's taken me on a bunch of fun quests. And I really trust him. All right, he was able to lead me across the street with his hands over my eyes. See, I'm really in his shoes. You were not quite in his shoes. You pulled it out and answered it for yourself. I really want you to answer it on Max's behalf. So if I were Max, I would go with Freak because so far Freak has proven to be a really good friend. He's proven that he's really trustworthy. I trust him. I have a lot of fun with him. And he tells me that it's a quest for treasure. My curiosity would definitely get the better of me. So I really want you guys to shape your answers thinking about the characters. Okay, Piper? I spend a lot of time in language arts in discussion because a huge part of language arts is speaking and listening. Okay, those are standards. I can pull them up for you right now and show them to you. Speaking and listening standards. So discussion is a huge part. Again, this is what I was saying in the beginning of class. Normally, I'd have you guys breaking up into small groups of 4 and 5 people and discussing. But as we look around the room, we only have 6 people. Okay, so it's kind of more whole group stuff. All right, that's my question about the chapter. Now, every single one of you should have written a question. So I'm going to go to Kid Blog. All right. And I would like for you guys to share your questions now. Any brave volunteers out there want to read their question? All right, we're going to start with Piper, and then I'll come back to Jacob here online.
how would you feel if you were going on a quest at 3 in the morning?
Okay, it's similar to mine, but it's different because we want to know about these characters' feelings now. Mine was just, would you go? Explain. So now, how would you feel if you were Max or Kevin going on this quest? That's a good question. All right, you guys get to answer it, and you get to call on them because it's your question. How would you guys feel about going on a quest in the middle of the night at 3 in the morning?
I would feel curious and confused why it was on 3 in the morning and not simple.
I would not do it. I'd be too tired.
All right, keep calling on people, Piper.
Justina, I would feel tired and also exhilarated.
Okay, tired but exhilarated. I'd feel worried. I'd be worried about getting into trouble. I'd be worried about the people that are out at that hour because, you know, my mom always used to say nothing good happens after midnight. So I'd be a little worried about being out that late, wondering what kind of people might be out there and what kind of trouble I might get into. But also, I'd be worried about getting into trouble with my own parents because I'm clearly breaking some kind of rules here.
Well, I'd probably be like scared because like I can't see and like I don't like going outside when it's dark because like I can't see anything and that just like makes me feel unsafe. So.
All right. Okay, good. We're going to go with one more question. Jacob's going to have it, and then we're going to jump into the book. Jacob, read your question loud for us.
Give me 1 second. Okay. If you were Max and you're going in the sewers to find treasure, how would you feel?
Okay, that was the same question that Piper just asked. It's a very good question, but that's the one that Piper... Questioning, guys, is a definite skill that you guys will develop and get stronger and stronger at. All right, we're ready to do the reading. So, every single person right now, open up to chapter 11. Take out your graphic organizers. Again, I'm surprised that nobody asked, what would you do with the purse? That would have been a really good question. They found a purse. What do you think they should do with the purse? Or what would you do with the purse? That wasn't my question. That was... Okay. All right. Chapter 11. So at the end of chapter 10, they now have Loretta Lee's purse. All right. And this is where we pick up with chapter 11. John, open your book. Take out your graphic organizer. As we read, focus on these 4 of the literary elements and begin with your setting and your plot. That's where you guys want to begin thinking. Where does our chapter take place and what's happening? Chapter 11, the damsel of distress. The address on the ID card is this place on the other side of the mill pond. They used to call it the New Tenements. But now everybody mostly calls it the New Testaments, which Graham told me has nothing to do with the Bible. People will make their jokes, she says. Call that place whatever you want, but you are not to set foot over there. Is that clear, Maxwell dear? It's not like I wanted to go into the Testaments, so it was real easy to keep that promise. And then, the day after we pull that soggy purse out of the sewer, Freak explains how it's okay to break a promise if you're on a quest. There may even be a reward involved, he says. The lady won't have money if she lives in the Testaments, I say. Poor people live there, and dope fiends. What we do is go down to the playground and cut over behind the little patch of trees just in case anybody is looking. And then we can circle around behind the pond. Freak is riding up top, which he almost always does now. That way he doesn't have to wear his leg brace or carry his crutches. And besides, I like how it feels to have a really smart brain on my shoulders, helping me think. Okay, so where are these guys going? What's happening at the start of the chapter? Justina?
They're getting ready to go to the test.
Okay, but why? Why are they going to the Testaments? Okay, but she's not an old lady. We don't know she's an old lady. But can you use her name? See, you haven't used the proper noun yet. Who? If you don't know, you should go back and look. You should go back and look if you don't know. If you don't know her name, Piper?
They're going to the Testaments to give Loretta Lee and
Good, Loretta Lee. And make sure that you understand, it's not the Testaments, it's the New Testaments. And the New Testaments is just a nickname given to a place called the Tenements. All right? Does anybody know what tenements are? Tenements are government housing. Governments can come along and say that this area needs housing. We have so many people that are either homeless or looking for homes, and they're government housing intended for people who have low incomes to live in. So these are not luxurious apartments, all right? These are low rent apartments. So the people that live there, they don't have a lot of money, all right? It's not like, Jane, you're a developer and you come in and build this really great apartment complex and you're trying to become a millionaire being a property developer. All right? That's kind of like what Trump used to do, develop properties. Okay? For money. This is where the government comes in and says, wow, we have a housing problem here. People need housing and they don't have a lot of money, so we need to make sure that the rents are cheap. So these are not super nice places. All right, and so they're called the tenements. And they've gotten this nickname called the New Testaments. All right, so that's where we are. So that goes where? That goes where? This is a part of setting, plot, conflict, character.
setting.
Well, to me, this is more of a plot. We said they are going, so they're doing something. So if they're doing something, this is part of the plot. They're going to the tenements to return Loretta Lee's purse. That's what's happening. That's what's happening. All right, let's keep reading. We're on our way to Loretta's house to return her purse. Freak is talking a mile a minute. I'm on page 64, kind of in the middle. Freak is talking a mile a minute. More stuff about the round table and how important quests are, and why knights are bound up with oaths, which is not the same thing as swearing. And I'm trying to listen and not ask questions, because if I ask questions, he'll pull out his dictionary. When we get to the Testaments, though, Freak shuts up. It's this big, fallen apart place with a bunch of apartments, and it looks sad, and it smells like fish or sour milk. There's a lot of bikes and toys laying around, mostly bashed up and broken. And the little kids who live there look almost as busted up as the toys. When they see us coming, they make these screaming noises and run away. But you can tell they're not really scared. They just want to pretend like we're a monster or something. Eek, eek. So now this becomes part of the setting. Where are our main characters, John? I would call it the tenements. The tenements. Because again, the New Testaments is the nickname. You could call it either one. Did you write it down?
Yeah.
All right. This last paragraph I just read gave us a really good description. When we talk about setting, it's not enough to just write down the where and the when. We need to describe it. So what are some of the things that you guys could write in your description of the setting? You had your hand up.
Well, it's poor, like bikes everywhere.
Poor, not just broken bikes. It's poor. Broken bikes are everywhere. Who else can add a descriptive detail? Frank?
Messy or dirty?
Messy, dirty. What does it smell like?
Fish.
Dead fish and sour.
Fish and sour milk. He says that it's falling apart. It's a big falling apart apartment. There's bashed up toys, broken bikes lying around. Make sure that you guys are describing the setting. It helps you get that picture in your head. Bottom of 64. Maybe we should reconsider this particular quest, Freak says. He's up there on my shoulders and he's getting fidgety, squirming around. But we're already outside the apartment door and I go, maybe she really needs the ID card. So it's my fault what happens next. The door opens before we even ring the bell. Top of 65 now. And this hand comes snaking out and reaches for the mailbox and finds this rolled up newspaper and pulls it back inside. And there's something about the blind way that the hand moves that's creepy. Get out of here, I'm thinking. Then, before I can get my feet moving fast enough to leave, this woman's voice is cussing us out. Iggy, she says, Iggy, come here and see this. Now she's standing in the doorway. This scrawny, yellow-haired woman with small, hard eyes and blurry red lips. She's wearing this ratty old bathrobe, and she's smoking this cigarette and squinting at us and making a face. Iggy, she says out of the side of her mouth, come here and tell me, is the circus in town or what? Next thing, there's this big, hairy dude in the doorway. He's got a huge beer gut and these giant arms all covered with blue tattoos. And he's got a beard that looks like it's made out of red barbed wire. What an awesome simile that is. Ain't the circus, he says, spitting a big gob on the step. This here's the carnival. Freak isn't saying anything, and I want to get out of here, so I go, sorry, wrong number, and I'm trying to back away and not fall over a tricycle when the hairy dude comes out of the door real quick and gets in my way. Not so fast, he says. Who sent you? I know, the big one, the woman is saying. She's waving her cigarette around and squinting her eyes up, and you can tell she's thinking on something, worrying it like a dog with a bone. I seen him around somewhere. Don't he look familiar, Iggy? Don't he? Finally, Freak finally says, please excuse us. We have the wrong address. We were trying to locate a Miss Loretta Lee. The tattoo dude hears that, and he starts to laugh. This fat sound way down in his big belly, and he goes, you hear that, Loretta? This an old flame of yours or what? Then he reaches up and pokes me in the chest hard enough to make me catch my breath. And he says, cat got your tongue, kid? What is this, a Siamese twin act? All I can think to say is, oops, because we have the right address after all. The squinty woman in the robe is Loretta Lee. And even more important, Iggy is Iggy Lee. And I feel like a total butthead because I've heard of Iggy Lee. He's the boss of the Panheads, this bad news motorcycle gang. Okay, we should be adding something to our plot here. What's something that you guys are going to add right now? Frank?
So Max and Kevin found a purse and they're trying to return it to Loretta Lee.
Okay.
That's what I have to start with.
All right, that's what you have started. Now, you don't have to write a paragraph here. You can just do bullets. So,
That they just found Iggy Lee.
yeah, the word that comes to me is found. Max and Kevin, they found the apartment. And at the apartment, they find Loretta and Iggy. Okay? The last couple of paragraphs, we get a real good description of Loretta and Iggy. We could add that in over here. But they're on their way to the tenements. They did. They found the apartment. They found Loretta Lee. That was a hard thing. They found Loretta Lee. She still lived in the same address. And they found Loretta and Iggy. They found these two people. And how are they feeling when they're standing there with Iggy and Loretta? Frank?
Scared, nervous.
They're scared. They're nervous. Okay? We have a couple minutes. We're going to keep on reading. We found your purse, Freak blurts out. And he tosses down the purse. And Iggy Lee catches it with one hand. And he gives Loretta this secret look. Like he's going to have some fun here. You better come inside, he says, looking up at Freak. You and Frankenstein. Now, this is also a great place, guys, to think about a level 2 kind of question. Again, thinking about our characters. How do we think Max is feeling in this moment? How do you think Kevin is feeling? What should they do? There's 3 level 2 questions that just came out of my mouth right away. How is Max feeling standing in there in the door? What's Kevin feeling? And I don't want you guys to just get in the habit of just stealing or taking my questions. I'm giving them to you guys as examples. I really want you guys to start to generate your own more and more and more. Putting yourself in these character shoes. All right? Here's one. What do you think Max and Kevin should do right now? Iggy Lee just said you need to come into my apartment. Iggy Lee just said, you boys better come in. What would you do? If you were Max and Kevin, what do you do? Piper?
I would go in so Iggy Lee don't beat me up or anything.
Okay, anybody want to respond, again, to my question? Also keeping in mind what Piper just said.
I would probably try to explain that that I have to go and stuff. That way he understands that I have to go.
What do you think of Piper's idea? Piper says I'd go in.
I think it'd be a good idea, but also at the same time you don't really know them, so.
Who thinks it's a good idea to go into a stranger's apartment? Piper, you said go in.
I actually changed my mind because you don't know because they can call the cops or hurt you. So I agree with Frank. He's trying to convince them they have to go.
How about you, John? We have a minute left in class.
I would go in.
So what would you do?
Just run away.
You would try to run away.
Yeah.
Okay. Justina, Iggy is standing in the doorway. You've just returned Loretta's purse, and Iggy is telling you, you boys better come on in.
I would probably tell Freak that I'm gonna make a run for it, so hold on.
Okay.
So he doesn't fall off my shoulders. I tell him to hold on so when I run away, he's still on.
Don't forget when you frame your answer. Frame your answer in light of who these people are. We just got a really good description of these two people. Who is Iggy? They tell us a little bit about who Iggy is, John.
A guy with tattoos and hairy.
He's the leader of something. What is he the leader of?
A motorcycle.
The dangerous bike.
A motorcycle gang. He's got a beard he described like barbed wire. Huge arms, big beer gut. Leader of the Bad Dude Motorcycle Gang. It's actually a really good spot for us to stop in our reading. And that leaves you guys tonight. Alright? About 3-4 more pages to read for the end of the chapter. We got ourselves to Iggy and Loretta's. And now we're going to see what happens with Max and Kevin. Well, welcome back. In class, we did not have time to finish reading the entire chapter, so I would like to take this time right now to pick up where we left off in class, and I would like to finish reading the chapter, so students that are learning virtually, you guys will be able to watch the video and read along with me. All right, so I'm going to pick up in chapter 11, right at the bottom of page 66, where Iggy Lee is asking Max and Kevin to come into their apartment. You better come in, he says, looking up at Freak. You and Frankenstein. Sorry, Freak says, and his voice is chattery high. We'll have to decline your kind invitation because we have to leave now. Loretta flicks her cigarette butt at my feet and she says, Iggy says come inside. You better do it. So, we go inside. I have to take Freak off my shoulder so we can get in the door. And that's when Loretta looks at me real hard and she says, I know that one. It's like a flash from the past, Iggy. You know him? Iggy isn't paying any attention to her. He's pointing at this ratty chair and he says, sit down. It makes me nervous looking up. Loretta comes around and she says, don't be making Iggy nervous. Not this early in the day. Last dude made him nervous. They had to. Shut up, Loretta, Iggy says in this real quiet voice. See, now here's a spot where I need to go back and I need to reread, because the way that I read that with a shouting voice, and that's not how Iggy said it. So I'm going to go back right here, and I'm going to reread it. Loretta comes around and she says, don't be making Iggy nervous. Not this early in the day. Last dude made him nervous. They had to. Shut up, Loretta, Iggy says in this real quiet voice. I'm thinking, you're right. He does look familiar. I'm sitting in this chair, which makes me feels like it might bust apart. And Freak is right next to me. And I can see he's trying to stand straight, but it's not easy because he's all bent up inside. Names, Iggy says. Freak clears his throat and tries to make his voice sound deep and more grown up. We're sorry to disturb you, but we have to go home now. It's a matter of some urgency. Iggy reaches out and he flicks his finger at Freak's nose. Whack. I can tell it hurts, but Freak doesn't say anything. He just tenses up. Iggy goes, I ask a question. You better answer it. Get it? Names. I want your names. Freak tells his name, and then mine. And Iggy reaches down and pats him on the head. Very good, he says. Now, that wasn't hard, was it? Next question. Where'd you get Loretta's purse? Freak tells him we found it in the storm drain. He doesn't mention us dressing up all in black, or the Darth Vader costume, or anything about knights or quests. Next question, Iggy says. Where's the money? Loretta coughs on her new cigarette and says, But Iggy, there wasn't any money. And he goes, Shut up, Loretta. And she coughs again and shuts up. You can tell she's afraid of Iggy, the way that she holds herself tight whenever he says anything. Freak goes, I've got $2 in change. You can have it, but we have to go home now. Iggy gives him this look like he's thinking seriously about throwing up. And he says, What is it with you? You gotta go home. We're having a nice little talk here. Don't spoil it. All of a sudden, Loretta jumps up and she goes, Iggy, I've got it. Kenny Kane. Remember Kenny Kane? For a second, I think he's going to hit her. And then he relaxes and really looks at me. And his eyes go wide and he nods and says, Sure, that's it. Kenny Kane, you're right. He's a ringer for old Killer Kane. Must be his kid, huh? Sure it is. Loretta looks real happy that she finally figured it out. And she runs into the kitchen and kicks some stuff out of the way and pulls open the refrigerator. And we can hear her laughing and saying, I knew it. I just knew it. When she comes back in, she's got 2 cans of Bud. And she pops them both and gives one to Iggy. Breakfast of champions, she says. What a flash, huh? You remember that time, old Kenny? Shut up, Loretta, Iggy says. Then he chugs the Bud and squashes the can in his fist, and he drops it right on the floor, which is the first time I notice all of the other crushed cans. They're everywhere. The whole place is like a trash can or a big ashtray or something. Meanwhile, Freak is giving me this look like he has no idea what's going on. And that look scares me more than Iggy Lee and all of his tattoos. Oh, I've got him too, Loretta says, snapping her fingers. The midget or dwarf or whatever he is. He must be Gwen's kid. You remember Gwen? Stuck-up Gwen? No, Iggy says. And his eyes are burning into me. Never heard of Gwen. Loretta goes, Doesn't matter. What a flash this is. Kenny Kane. Time flies, huh, Ig? I can remember when these two were born. And then, what was it? A couple years later, Kenny does his thing and he's in the yard, right? Doing time? Iggy says, That he is. I know a guy knows him inside. He gives me this creepy look and he says, You go up to visit the old man? You tell him Iggy says hello, okay? I doubt he even knows his father, Ig. He was only a little kid when it happened, right? I don't say anything, and Freak is looking at me like he's never seen me before. And then Iggy says, Killer Kane. What a tough hombre he was. Loretta says, I heard he'd seen the light in there. He's got religion. Is that true? I don't know. Iggy snorts and he says, He don't know. You don't know much, do you? I shake my head. Loretta says, He's some kind of retard, Ig. He don't even know how big and strong he is. I'll bet. She pokes Iggy or tackles... She pokes Iggy or tickles him, and this strange giggly voice, she says, Why ain't you find out? Find out if he's as strong as he looks. Iggy scowls and he goes, "Give me a break, Loretta." He gives me this long look, and then he hooks his thumb at the door and says, "Showtime is over, boys. Get out of here, to both of you." Loretta says, "But Iggy, we could have some fun." "You're a retard, Loretta," Iggy says. "What if Killer Kane hears I mess with his kid? No, thank you." "He's in for life," she says. "What's the harm?" "Life ain't life. How many times I tell you that?" Loretta is squinting at him and she goes, "Are you serious? He's getting out someday?" And Iggy looks at me and tells her to shut up again. Finally, we get to the door, and that's when Loretta wants to rub Freak on the head real hard with her knuckles. "This is for luck," she says to Iggy. "It's good luck rubbing a dwarf on the head." Freak is trying to duck away, and he says, "I'm not a dwarf, and I'm not good luck." So Loretta gives up on rubbing his head, and she stands up straight and folds her arms and says, "Hey, midget man, I know all about you. Your old man was a magician. Didn't you know that?" Freak is scuttling around behind me, keeping out of her way. But when she says that, I can tell he wants to know about his father, if maybe he really was a magician. "Yeah," Loretta says, "right after you was born, he must be a magician, because as soon as he heard the magic words, birth defect, he disappeared." A second later, Iggy shoves us out the door. And that's the end of chapter 11. Now, the assignment tonight is everyone needs to make sure that they do the quiz on the Google Classroom. And make sure that you answer the short written response in a complete paragraph. Today, I gave you guys a new material. I gave you guys an example of a strong written paragraph using the IDER structure, using that format. So I want you guys to make sure that tonight you guys are strengthening your written responses, and then make sure that you post your question to KidBlog. You might ask a question about that last piece of information that we just heard about Kevin's father. You might ask a question about how Max or Kevin feel about being in Iggy Lee's apartment. You might ask a question about whether or not you think it was a good idea for them to even go in the apartment in the first place. So the kinds of questions that you guys could ask are limitless. I want you guys to make sure you post them onto KidBlog so that tomorrow we can make them part of our classroom discussion. So with that, guys, tomorrow we're going to be moving on, and we're actually going to be tackling 2 chapters tomorrow, chapters 12 and 13. And actually, that won't be tomorrow. That will be on Thursday. So if you're in the A-Day group, please join us for the live stream. If you're in the B-Day group, I will see you here in class. And if you are in the virtual group, make sure that you join us for the live stream or that you're watching the video lessons. All right, you guys have a great day. Try to stay out. Try to stay dry out there. It's a wet one. You guys have a good evening. Bye.